Kings, queens, and in-betweens, welcome back to another City Boys episode. This is another installment of the City Boys Spotlight. This is a section of our channel where we are deep diving all 30 MLS teams. And on this episode, we're going to be deep diving the Sporting Kansas City. Now, I am joined, as always, by two of my best friends in the game right now. Ethan, how are we doing today, brother?
It's another day in paradise, gentlemen. Y'all know that this is one of my favorite things to do. So I'm really excited to be sharing with everyone. Unfortunately, we're talking about Sporting Kansas City, but I think I'll get over it. Grayson, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I don't want to hear any comments about us wearing the same outfit from the last episode. We didn't change, whatever. But yes, I'm excited to be here. Very excited to talk about Sporting Kansas City. What a club. What
Yeah,
a club.
technically my outfit never changes every single episode. I'm always in the City Boys merch.
Got your uniform on.
Yeah,
An
this is
outfit repeater.
I'm going to work.
Yeah.
We're deep diving
Yeah.
Sporting Kansas City. All cards on the table here. The three of us are St. Louis City fans. So we are going to try and be as unbiased in this breakdown as possible, but we are not giving any promises. All right. Yeah, let's start this one out easy. Grayson, let it rip,
Yep.
brother.
I'm gonna take you guys back to the great year of 1996 because we've got on our hands another MLS founding father. Remember, we've got Sporting Kansas City, originally known as the Wiz, just the Wiz for their debut season.
Like that.
Piss.
Um, yeah, so let me break it down for you. They were founded by a honestly United States sports legend, Lamar Hunt, who's absolutely insane. Listen to this. Bro founded Kansas City Sporting, the Kansas City Chiefs, principal founder of the American Football League, predecessor to the NFL, founded the NASL, and then, of course, the MLS. You know, he was a founding member. Just this guy's track record is absurd. He's founding stuff left and right, man. He can't
You
stop
can't
finding things.
stop.
He would become an NFL owner um, eventually, and he would actually have to battle against the other NFL owners who were lobbying against him for promoting soccer in America. They were trying to make him
Huh.
either lose his soccer franchise or his football franchise. And he actually won the court case and got to keep both because he was promoting at the time the Dallas Tornado, which was his NASL team before
Huh.
moving into the MLS. But basically, Lamar Hunt, super dedicated guy, set on expanding professional sports in America, not just soccer alone. He was also really big into football, and of course, tennis. He was a big tennis guy, and he actually
Interesting.
started he like kicked off the trend for how tennis has like the open system. They had like the US Open and that sort of thing. Like that was also started by Lamar Hunt. So pretty crazy, pretty crazy. Just another fun fact, he also owned two other MLS franchises. He founded the Columbus Crew with his son and also purchased FC Dallas in 2003. That oil money was crazy.
What a
Crazy.
psycho. Lamar,
He doesn't
relax.
stop. He would go on to pass in 2006, and they would honor him by naming, of course, the U.S. Open Cup, the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. They would name that for him. Um, so yeah, what a guy, really insane.
Wow.
Little Kansas City tidbit there, but more on the club. So, formerly known as the Wiz in their debut season before a lawsuit with a tech company would make them change their name to officially the Wizards in their second season.
It sounds like
Um,
everybody was suing Lamar Hunt at
yeah,
one point in his life.
yeah, they wanted the bag. This was America. Uh, the club started off really well. They made it to a conference finals in their debut season, losing to the LA Galaxy. But then they began to struggle until the year 2000. They started off that season with a run of 12 games unbeaten. Talk about a turnaround. They would end up clinching their first MLS Cup, led by the MLS MVP goalie Tony Meola,
Legend.
as well as current Kansas City head coach Peter Vermes, who
Yep.
won Defender of the Year that year. Pretty crazy. The rest of the 2000s was pretty mediocre for Kansas City after that. They made a run in 2003, but then, of course, got knocked out by Landon Donovan's San Jose. And then they would make another MLS Cup appearance in 2005, but would lose to the powerhouse at the time, DC United. Moving on in their history, 2011 is the next big check mark for Kansas City. That would be the dark day. They had one of the worst rebounds of all time, in my opinion. The Wizards would become the Kansas City Sporting, adopting the Sporting name. I actually didn't know this, from European clubs who actually had multiple sports, which, of course, Barcelona has a basketball team. They've got a handball team. They've got a bunch of other teams. So, that's pretty common. But Kansas City doesn't have multiple sports. They did announce at the time that they were going to expand to a lacrosse club and a rugby club. Never materialized. So they kept the name, but they had reasoning, but the reasoning's not really there. As we've mentioned multiple times in our lore, all three of us technically did don the Sporting colors for a little bit when we played for their St. Louis affiliate club before St. Louis City, existed. So as much as we are biased against the rebrand, we do know that us three, we did look pretty good in those checkered blue jerseys, but hey, can't say the same for the rest of you, okay? This would lead us to some of the best years for Kansas City, in my opinion. And this is the Kansas City that I grew up with. Graham Zusi and Matt Beasler's Kansas City.
Yo.
When I read Matt Beasler, I was like, yo, I used to love that guy. Matt Beasler, the center back. They would lead the Kansas City to win the Open Cup in 2012. And then 2013, they would, of course, go on to beat RSL in the MLS Cup final, pick up their most recent trophy. MLS Cup trophy, sorry. And interestingly enough, that MLS Cup final was the coldest MLS Cup in history. It was pretty chilly, and it would eventually go on to pens. I'm pretty sure that, the temperature probably had a lot to do with that. But then Peter Vermes winning that MLS Cup would make Peter Vermes the only person to have won MLS Cup both as a coach and as a player. So that's pretty interesting. They would go on to win the US Open Cup in 2015 and 2017, leaving their tally currently at 4 US Open Cup titles, which is pretty good. Pretty darn good. And that would pretty much bring us to modern day Kansas City, current side, and a little bit of a rebuild, losing some of their big names this year. So let's go ahead and talk about that.
Before we move into it, I remember there was a time in my childhood where I was like begging for Matt Beasler to be the starting center back for the U.S. men's national team for every international call-up. I thought he was so good as a young lad. I was wrong. He was a talent at the time, but he should not have been the CB1. So I stand corrected now. As an adult, I could say that. But a young Jacob wanted to see Matt Beasler all the time wearing red, white, and blue. But I digress into the current roster. Like Grayson stated, they are currently in a rebuild. They actually only have 7 dudes on their roster right now. Like confirmed 7 guys.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Currently, if you look it up, not their own website, but if you go look at like Transfer Market and FOTMob, they have only 7 dudes under contract right now for Sporting Kansas City. Of those 7 returning, they've got Daniel Shallowy and Eric Tommy. So those are some big names that they're keeping.
Good names for them to have.
As well as St. Louis, whatever the opposite of a favorite is, right back Jake Davis is also under contract. Shallowy had 2 goals and 6 assists in all comps last season, so he drastically underperformed. If you compare to his 2021 run of form, he had 16 goals and 9 assists in all competitions. So definitely looking to get him back to that level of production. And then they just sold Alan Pulido to Chivas Guadalajara for $1.45 million fee, which honestly, I thought was pretty low. I think Polito was probably their best player last year, and only like selling for under like 3 million for him is kind of crazy.
Their club record signing.
Yeah, that's so low.
Even if I'm not a St. Louis fan here, I think MLS, Kansas City fans might agree with me. I think Polito should have done more as a DP, as their record signing. I think Kansas City expected a lot better from him. Super inconsistent at times, like very streaky. And St. Louis knows a lot about that too. That's a major signing to be pretty pretty streaky. So I think that probably went into a lot of his salary or the money that they're making from there, like 1.5 or whatever. Honestly, I'm not too surprised by that number. I think that's about right in my opinion.
I don't know. I thought 3 million was like the minimum mark for a DP outgoing in the MLS, but I digress. Tim Melia, their goalkeeper, is currently a free agent. Johnny Russell,
38 years old, old man.
he was a problem for St. Louis.
He is good though. He is good.
Like at
Don't get me
38,
wrong.
he was still doing bits. And then Johnny Russell also both of them are free agents. I
Yeah.
think if you're gonna target anyone to re-sign of those two, it would be Johnny Russell. I think Johnny Russell is class as a player. He definitely sucks to go against.
Yep.
However, something I thought was cool, they did add some young lads from their academy that are on contract with the national team. Midfielder Jacob Bartlett. Not sure if he's related to the Bartlett that
Lucas.
we sent up to DC. This kid is 16-year-old. Ian James, 16-year-old center back from the academy, signed a senior roster spot. 16 years old. They also signed another 16-year-old goalkeeper, Jack Courtcamp, as well. So
Hmm.
we'll see. They did sign Joaquin Fernandez, a center back, on a free transfer from the Turkish league, the club Trabzonspor.
Yes, they're actually a fantastic side in Turkey. Like they're a top tier squad.
I'm just glad I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah,
Um,
that was good.
and then, as you mentioned, Peter Vermees, he is still their head coach. For those of you who don't know, he likes to run a 4-3-3 formation, and he uses pace merchants up top as well as highly technical playmakers in his midfield. With only having 7 guys, though, like I am definitely on the lookout for who they sign because
Hmm.
with like kind of in the same spot that San Diego is right now with like not
Yeah.
having enough guys of a roster, it is really tough to like see what they're gonna look like next season, especially with their star DP on the like being sold. They don't really have another star DP, so I'm sure they're in the market
Hmm.
for a pretty big name. And this will be like the third rebuild under Peter Vermees after a disappointing season last season. So if things like don't go well this year, Peter Vermees might be a free agent by the end of the season. But
Hmm.
that brings us into the prediction part of the episode. Ethan,
We're here.
let's run some predictions, brother.
Yes, sir. Speaking of next season, of course, we need to talk about last season just a little bit more, just to give you guys a little bit of context to how they did. Their record at the end of last season was 8, 7, and 19. So 8 wins, 7 draws, and 19 losses. They ended on 31 points with a goal differential of negative 15. That is never a good sign. You never want your goal difference to be in the negative at
Hmm.
all, nonetheless, double digits. They did have 51 goals for, but conceded 66. They ended 27th in the Supporters Shield and 13th in the Western Conference last season. So the crossbar is set a little bit low for them. But guys, I want to know, will they make the playoffs next season? Are they going to be a bubble team or do they not even stand a chance? Grayson, let's start with
Hmm.
you.
Okay. Okay. I, for some reason, I think it's because the lack of players. They have a lot of canvas to work with. I I think from Kansas City, we're gonna see some really interesting signings. I'm thinking some foreign players from smaller leagues that we haven't really heard of before that are gonna be better than we thought. I think Sporting Kansas City improves. I think they are a bubble team. There's not a lot to base on that, but I just have a feeling they have they have money to work with. They have a lot of room to work with. Peter Vermees, he's got to do something.
Yeah.
I agree. I think they're a bubble team as well. My whole thought process behind that is because of like historically Sporting Kansas City being like they're either in it or they're not, you know. It is really difficult to count Sporting Kansas City out like ever, especially anytime like we've faced them. It becomes a dogfight because of the rivalry. And they do play with like a chip on their shoulder all the time. So I think it's tough to count them out. I definitely see them on the bubble for sure.
Wow. I mean, I think as St. Louis City fans, that is being just more than fair. I do not see them making the playoffs next season simply because they are letting go of a lot of their marquee players. I don't know who's going to step up as a veteran leader on their team. I will say that Peter Vermes has decades literally of experience in the MLS now. So that kind of pedigree is easy to work off of. However, I don't think they will be able to put it together in time. We're just under 50 days until the MLS season begins. So I don't see it for Sporting Kansas City next season. I won't count them out though. Well, yeah, I will. Of the playoffs, I am counting them out. We'll set the crossbar at 9.5 games next season. Last season, they won 8 games. So could they get above 10 games? 9.5 games, the crossbar is set at. Jacob, are you burying it or are you skying it?
The West is a lot harder to make the playoffs in right now. So I'm gonna bury it, but just barely. Like just barely gets past the goalkeeper's hands. I think they probably win 9 games.
Put them at 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's safe.
Okay. I think that I am gonna have to bury it as well. I think they get 8 wins. I think they improve slightly. I think they get a couple more draws as well. I realize I said they improved so much, but then I'm taking the under here. So kind of contradicting myself, but
I
I
will
stand by
also
it.
say that I don't know if 8 wins will get them a bubble spot in
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
playoffs
that's what I'm
in the
saying.
West. In my opinion, I actually believe that Sporting Kansas City will win above 10 games next season. I'm going to sky it. And here's my logic. They lost 19 times last season, so I think that they will lose a similar amount. However, I think they will convert some of those draws into wins. Hopefully not against St. Louis because we drew
Yeah,
twice against them last season. However,
no need for more.
I think if they can convert 2 of those draws from last season into wins, then they will be safely getting 10 wins next season.
Interesting shouts. Interesting shouts.
Our next prediction is for total goals in 2025. 2024, the squad netted 51 goals. So I'm putting the crossbar at 50 goals next season.
Okay.
I'm going to kick us off because I think that I'm going to bury this one. I think that they are going to be underneath 50 goals. And the reason being that I believe that Eric Tommy and Daniel Shalhoub will perform better than last season. I even really like Stephen Afrifa and Willie Agata to get more involved in the
Mm,
attack. I just don't know how well they will gel. I think a player like Johnny Russell leaving them is very detrimental. And so I don't know where else those goals will come from them.
I'm actually going
uh,
to take the over. I have absolutely no idea who's going to be banging the ball in the back of the net because they don't really have a roster right now. 50 goals is not a very high marker, in my opinion. I think
Especially
like
for a bubble team.
they have had very high scoring draws in the past, and even though they're draws, that's still lots of tallies towards the goal marker. I take the over on goals for during the season.
Interesting.
I think what we saw a lot from Sporting Kansas City last year that I noticed whenever I watched them play was like they would score a lot of more fantastic goals. So like the lower XG goals. They score the goals that no one really expects, but they don't score the easy goals. So I think if they can turn their offense into converting easier chances, they will score over 50. So I'm taking the over because I do think they will somehow net more goals. I think whoever they sign is going to be an improvement on Alan Polito. That's my take, and I think that pushes him over 50 goals.
All right, gentlemen. Well, we are on to our final prediction. We've taken our shots at the crossbar. This is the 2025 player of the season for Sporting Kansas City. Jacob.
They don't have anybody, bro. I'm gonna go Eric Tommy.
That's a good shout.
I kind of think that's the easy answer, and I like it. I like it.
I rate Tommy. He's a frightening guy to play against.
He shows up against St. Louis.
Shows up against Inter Miami. He's a big game player. I rate Shallowy better. I actually think Shallowy's a better player. Even though he's not scoring, like his output tanked last season. He still plays like he has a good output. You can see he's got a goal in him. He's definitely got an assist in him. I said it last season, I think. If STL had to sign a player from Kansas City, I'd take Shallowy. He kind of reminds me of improved CJ Stroud kind of winger. Like a more technically
CJ
proficient.
Stroud.
I was like, hold on, isn't CJ Stroud a player in the NBA?
Quarterback for the
he's the
Oh my
Texans
God.
quarterback. Yeah.
Oh my God. What the fuck?
Dude, it's
CJ
fantasy
Stroud.
football on the mind.
Did you mean Jared Stroud of DC United?
Yes, Jared Stroud. I've been playing a lot of fantasy football, okay?
It reminds me of a better
Jesus.
CJ Stroud as a winger. Threw me. I was like, what the? Am I having a stroke? Did I hear that correctly?
Okay. Moving on. Jared Stroud. He's an improved Jared Stroud. He's an energizer bunny of a winger. He never stops running, and he actually has, in my opinion, I think he's more technically proficient than Jared Stroud. So I think I would take him for MVP of Kansas City next season out of the 7 players we have to choose from. Or Ian James, that 16-year-old. Let's go, man. Let's see it.
I wouldn't be mad about a teenage academy product coming up and being their player of the season next year.
That'd be crazy.
I actually have an out there pick inspired a little bit by Grayson picking Nick Lima in the San Jose episode. And I'm going to go for an outside back myself and say Logan Ndenbe, the 24-year-old Belgian defender. Last season, he tore his ACL 5 games in or so, very early on into the year. So he didn't get to see much action. But I remember in St. Louis's first year, the kid was good. He was very good against us. I also rate Stephen Afrifa and Willie Agata. I mentioned them earlier, but it's weird to me that their names aren't on the roster. I can't imagine Sporting Kansas City not bringing these players back. But in the same vein as you, Grayson, if I could just pick one player off Sporting Kansas City, it would be Stephen Afrifa. He is very dangerous around the box, lightning quick on the ball, and you just never know what he's going to do next. And I think St. Louis could really benefit from a player like that. Man, so I wouldn't be surprised if Stephen Afrifa is their real player of the season, especially since he's an attacker. But I'm going to shout out the fullback union, support the boys, and pick Logan Ndenbe.
All right, word.
But those are all the predictions that we have, guys. That just about wraps up Sporting Kansas City. But of course, we have to have some final thoughts about St. Louis City's little brother.
I'd like to point out that St. Louis finished slightly above Kansas City last year. That's all.
St. Louis City, this is low-hanging fruit, but also doesn't play in a furniture mart.
And before the Sporting Kansas City fans come in the comments talking about how many trophies St. Louis City has,
Fair enough.
we have better barbecue. You guys have been in the league longer. I'll take that trophy for now. We'll take our trophies when the time is right. And I feel confident about that. However,
Also, as of January 9th, 2025, your roster versus our roster right now stands not a single chance. You can't even field an entire 11 right now. So
We'll play tomorrow. When if you guys are ready, we'll play tomorrow.
Set it up.
We're ready.
After a little bit of shit talking, still thank you guys for watching and sticking around to the end of the video. If you are new, make sure you subscribe. We are so close to 100 subscribers. It's not even fucking funny anymore. Also, if we missed anything, please educate us in the comments. We're learning about all these teams as we go, so we're destined to miss some things. If you're
Kansas City
listening,
fans, pop off. Talk your shit. Let's hear it.
go crazy in the comments. But if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow and rate 5 stars. On our next episode, we will be covering the New England Revolution. So if you're a Revs fan tuning in for the first time, we're hitting you guys next. Be on the lookout for that episode. And finally, our most important call to action, do not forget to tell your mothers you love them. Peace.
Love you, Mom.
MLS.
MLS.
MLS. MLS. MLS.